Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, is the Baltimore Sun just trying to sell newspapers, or do they really think Larry Hogan has a chance to upset Anthony Brown in the Maryland governor's race? How prepared is Montgomery County for a case of Ebola? And who should be elected as a Montgomery County Circuit Court judge? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. But first, we're going to sit down for a few minutes with Jim Shalleck, Republican candidate for county executive. Stay tuned. And welcome back. And welcome, Mr. Shalleck. Jim Shalleck is no stranger to our program and to our regular viewers. Mr. Shalleck has been a regular panelist on this program for many more years than I can even count. And Mr. Shalleck has a well-earned and respected career as an attorney in Montgomery County. And before that, he served with the Justice Department and as assistant district attorney in the Bronx, where he was the prosecutor in the Son of Sam murder case. I want to thank and welcome Mr. Shalleck for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Shalleck is running against Democrat Isaiah Leggett, who's seeking re-election to his third term in office. And Jim, you have 7 main points in your platform. What do you think is the most important of them?
To me, it's public safety. You mentioned my background. I've seen what evil can do. We have 154,000 students and 12,000 teachers. I want to see a police presence at every single school to prevent the horrible tragedy that we see happening around the country. Right now, there's a police presence only at the 26 high schools. That's not enough.
Jim, that seems like an unnecessary and costly method for trying to prevent dangers to our children, when statistically it shows that most of our schools are very safe.
It only takes one incident to change a family's life forever and the personality of a community. I never want to see a CNN helicopter over any of our schools following a tragic shooting at one of our institutions. Under my watch, we're going to be ready. At 26 schools, having police presence is not enough. And on that topic, we have over 10,000 kids, our children, being taught in trailers. That's outrageous. And they have no bathrooms, only one way in, and temperature control is often faulty. We got to get our kids out of trailers into classrooms.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because that sure sounds like a Democratic proposal, not a Republican proposal. How are you going to pay for this? And not only the construction costs of building new classrooms, which may be unnecessary and unneeded 10 or 15 years from now, but also the upkeep of all these things.
Well, to me, it's not a political issue. It's a putting children first issue. How do you pay for it? Well, first you pay for it. I proposed a 3% cut across our $5 billion budget, and also privatizing our liquor stores, where we're the only county in the United States that owns the liquor stores. I want to privatize them. We get 50 million right away, studies say. So my priorities are public safety, and spending then will be dictated by my priorities. Keeping a child safe is more important than anything, and the county executive, that's got to be his first goal every day. Make sure all 154,000 kids come home safe.
But Jim, it sounds to me that you're going to increase the budget exponentially if you're going to eliminate these portable classrooms and go into a construction project.
Well, you don't have to use construction. You can rent property. You can use vacant buildings. You got to think out of the box. But the goal has to be, my opponent has been in elected office 24 years, and the kids are still in trailers. You don't work in a trailer. It's outrageous, and we've got to make the decisions to do it. We can rent properties, we can use vacant buildings. Construction is the most expensive, but the best alternative. But if we can't afford construction, then we look at other means.
Would you increase class sizes?
I'd like not to. I mean, if you have to, though, to a small amount, maybe. Because public safety is, if there's God forbid, an attack, and parents are rushing to school to see if their child is alive, they're not thinking about, is the purple line a good idea or bad? Is the bag tax a good idea? One thing is on their mind, their child. And my obligation is to the parents and the children to keep them safe.
Well, you talked about the bag tax, and you talked about repealing the bag tax, and the bag tax is dedicated to improving the Chesapeake Bay. What other tax areas would you eliminate or reduce, freeze, and would you freeze employee spending?
Well, there'll be no new taxes in my administration. And what I would like to do is reduce the property tax and the energy taxes right away. You know, you have to prioritize, Casey, and my view is the private sector is the engine for recovery. Bring in business, give them tax incentives, come in with your employees. If they need a road built into their facility, we build it. It's the private sector is the engine, in my opinion, to economic growth. And we've got to be business friendly, which we're not.
Jim, you talk a lot about privatizing the liquor stores. And you say that there is an enormous pot of gold out there if we do so. But aren't we reaping the benefits as a county from all those sales at retail liquor sales? We're acting as a wholesaler and a retailer, and we're reaping the markup and the benefit that comes with being the same.
Well, the fact that we're the only county in the United States says something to do that. The study says you get $50 million right away for selling off these assets and millions more each year from fees and taxes. You know, if you own a liquor store, you're set for life. That's a great business. And I want to privatize it. I think we bring in more revenue doing it that way.
Jim, we only have a few minutes left. In fact, we have about a minute left. Is there any one message that, as we're approaching the last few weeks of the campaign, that you want to give to voters in Montgomery County?
Well, I want to make it more affordable for them to live here. I don't want to raise taxes. I'd like to reduce them. Bring in business, so revenue from them makes it easier for us and not having to take more money out of our pockets to pay taxes. But public safety is my main message. In today's world, I never want to see a Montgomery County school being on the news. And that's my goal every day. Keep our kids safe.
Well, Jim, I want you to thank you for being here tonight. And I also want to thank you for running for office, because I think people who run for office have a special duty to our citizens and to our entire governmental structure. Congratulations for undertaking this effort. And for our viewers who would like to learn more about Mr. Shalleck or Mr. Shalleck's opponent, please visit the Montgomery Media website, where you can find my interview of Ike Leggett, which was conducted earlier in the summer, plus a debate between Mr. Leggett and Mr. Shalleck that was held here at Montgomery Media. Now stay tuned for our panel when we come back from this short break.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
And welcome back. We're now joined by our panel of political experts. Our first is political consultant Steve Kreseski, education activist Cynthia Rubenstein, and the president of Progressive Maryland, Elbridge James. Now, the old saying in the news business is that dog bites man. It isn't a story, but man biting dog, that's a headline. So this week, as the usual suspects, the Washington Post and the Baltimore Sun issued endorsements for Democratic candidate for governor, the current Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown. Maryland is the Democratic bluest of blue, after all. But when the Gazette newspapers came out with their endorsement for Larry Hogan, that was news. People stood up and watched, because not many people expected that. So my first question is to Elbridge. Elbridge, the Gazette newspaper said they gave their endorsement to Hogan because Hogan brings hope. What does that mean?
You got me. Hope that maybe they'll have some greater turnout, but believe me, I don't see him having what they call a snowball's chance in you-know-where of winning, but it can happen. It can happen. But it's really the lieutenant governor's race to lose. He can lose it, though, but it is his race to lose.
Okay, Cynthia, last week you weren't very concerned that there might be an upset brewing. Has anything changed?
Not really. I think voters are still really lukewarm about both candidates, and I think turnout's going to be really down. Anthony Brown is bringing the president to stump for him.
Isn't that a sign of desperation?
It's a sign of trying to gin up some support in some key areas like Prince George's County, and he's got to do well. He can win with Baltimore, Prince George's County, and Montgomery County, but people in all those three jurisdictions have to show up and vote.
Steve, now you've heard your two Democratic panelists just here counting votes before the election has even occurred. You had a front row seat when Bob Ehrlich was elected the first Republican governor in 30 years. Tell the audience why Larry Hogan has a shot.
I think the Gazette, and I applaud their publisher and their editorial board for making that decision. They realize what the key issues are. In all the polling, all the interviews, most Marylanders respond to the economic issues. Taxes, which are in orbit, lack of ability to trade up in jobs or even get jobs, debt overload, overhang on middle-class families, and better educational opportunities. And basically, Larry Hogan has been consistent on this message. He's galvanized the Republican base. He's bringing over a lot of independents, a majority of independents, and he's making serious inroads into the Democratic base. It's reminiscent of what Governor Ehrlich did to win in 2002. The question's going to be, does he have the infrastructure and the build out of the party organization, and is he in a well-placed position for Montgomery County voters on social issues? And he is a social moderate, so I think he will be.
Elbridge, I mean, you've heard a compelling case just then, but the issue is Anthony Brown going to light a spark and bring out the vote?
He forgets one big point, and this is a big point. In Ehrlich's day, the Democratic Party self-destructed. The governor candidate, lieutenant governor candidate, last minute Republican. We don't have that same scenario this time around. You have an organized Democratic Party that is determined to have 4, if not 8 more years of Democratic leadership. There are some things that were caused by the Ehrlich administration, like tax breaks and things of this nature, we're trying to recover from. That's being said, yeah, there has to be some corrections in terms of the financing, the tax laws, and things of this nature. But the Democrats can do it.
Cynthia, and then we'll give Steve the opportunity to finish it up. There doesn't seem to be an enthusiastic voter base this year. If you look at the primary vote in the primaries, voting was down in all categories. How's that going to turn around quickly?
I think what's going to happen, I think Prince George's County is going to have much stronger turnout than, say, Montgomery. And I think that's where Anthony Brown has literally put his money, is in Prince George's County. He's from Prince George's County, and they are pulling out all the stops there.
All right.
He can take Montgomery County for granted, but he really has to have strong support in Prince George's.
Steve, you're going to have to save it to the parting shots because we got to go on to our next
Casey,
topic.
I look to the professional class and the people that really understand this. Democratic Governors Association has put $800,000 into a safe state. It shows desperation. Putting the president in place, 20 days out, desperation. This is a very competitive race.
All right, well, we're going to take some time from our next topic. So we have enough time to talk about the final one. The Maryland system of judicial election requires that sitting judges run for election every 15 years, and generally these non-partisan elections don't draw any attention, interest, or even opposition. But this year, as pointed out in the Washington Post, it's a different set of circumstances. Steve, briefly, talk about the 4 judicial seats that are up and the difference between the 5 candidates that are running.
30 years ago, I worked for a chief judge in Baltimore City Circuit Court. There were 23 judges on the bench. Maryland's system of nominating and having the governor put forward members of the bar to be judges has wonderful checks and balances. It's a really great system. And then there's a retention aspect to that. And the judges that you see running in Montgomery County have been nominated. They're all good judges. And this is a retention election. If they're there for 15 years, then they're automatically put up again for election. Well, the anomaly this time is one judge has a serious charge with the Judicial Disabilities Commission. She has violated not only indiscretions with regard to the judge, her judicial responsibilities, but she may have broken the law. And so that's being investigated. This information needs to be brought out to the public for Judge Audrey Creighton. It's been in the papers, and it's up to basically the voters to know who they're voting for.
So Cynthia, the sitting judges, Nelson Rupp and Mr. Baer, Judge Baer, and I can't remember, Judge Ryan, as well as Audrey Creighton, seem to be running as a unit this time again. Does Dan Connell, running as an outsider, have a chance?
I mean, that's a race that voters pay little enough attention to, county executive, county council, state delegates. They pay more attention to school board than much more than anything else. Judges are at the bottom of awareness and knowledge. So he has very, very little chance. And Judge Creighton, with her current difficulties, may get in regardless.
I'm going to ask Elbridge real quick because we got to go. But will the Washington Post endorsement for Dan Connell have an impact?
No, but the publicity will.
Okay, we got to keep moving. That's because the gravity of our next topic and the threat from the Ebola disease is weighing heavily on the public. As health workers contracted the disease and the federal government seems to backtrack on its claims for readiness, this past Thursday, dock workers in Baltimore staged an hour-long work stoppage, refusing to load a cargo ship destined for West Africa until they had assurances that the ship was Ebola-free. Today, not only did we learn that the infected health worker from Dallas is being transferred to NIH for treatment, but also there was a scare at the Pentagon when someone took sick during a tour. And finally, Dulles Airport is one of the primary entry points for travelers who might have been exposed. Elbridge, how real is this concern, and are we prepared for it?
Concern is very real. Are we prepared for it? No. But this also comes at a time when we've had the CDC and NIH, because cease restriction and other federal cutbacks have been losing money, have had their budgets cut. And unlike other things, research is at the bottom of finding the cure. We can't go out and say, let's go to the grocery store and find something. We got to have good research,
you can't
and that
blame the
costs
Republican
money.
boogeyman for this.
I didn't say the Republicans.
No, that's what you were saying.
No,
What do
I
you think
didn't.
sequestration means? Come on, let's call it straight here.
With the Democrats and Republicans both dropping the ball.
All right,
and this is coming home to roost. This is, be honest with you, this is not as bad as AIDS or the influenza virus, which is killing us across the country. But bottom line, we should have been better prepared, and this is why you have research.
Cynthia.
Well, one thing I learned today, and one of the frustrations I think that the CDC has, is that everybody expects them to tell hospitals what, to regulate hospitals. They are not a regulatory agency. They can make advisories, they can provide information for hospitals, but the states regulate hospitals. So they should not be in the hot seat for making sure that hospitals are doing what they're supposed to do. I talked to a nurse today who works at Sibley, and she's getting up-to-the-minute advisories on how hospitals are going to screen every patient that enters their doors, first with questions about recent travel, and then second battery of questions about symptoms. So they are taking this very seriously. Nurses are on the front line. They're trying to absorb this information and put it into practice as quickly and as well as possible. But they need resources, they need equipment, they need protocol, and then they need perfect practice.
Steve, one of the issues that I think most people are concerned about is that the federal government didn't seem to react quickly enough months ago when the Ebola virus was rampaging through West Africa, that the federal government was asleep at the switch. How can we recover from this?
Well, the question is essentially isolation. You have to isolate populations, and then you do the best job within the countries where the effect is going on. I think the world community is stepping up. We have 4,000 troops over there building hospitals and trying to bring them into the first world. But there shouldn't be free travel between those countries. It's only 150 nationals that come over every day from those countries. We're not going to wreck an economy. I agree with Governor O'Malley coming forth today and saying Maryland is in an exceptional state. We have the NIH and a lot of other federal resources. We have world-class hospitals, Hopkins University and others. I think they're dealing with protocols as Cynthia has identified, but I do agree with Elbridge that the federal government, starting with the president on down, really flubbed this one. I think it was a poor choice for a czar. I think it should have been somebody from the medical community, a retired surgeon general or a military general, not a party hack who's going to try to coordinate this. I don't feel like people are reassured.
Well, but don't the, and I don't want to pick on the healthcare workers, but there was a healthcare worker who knowingly, after treating Mr. Duncan, got on an airplane, flew to Cleveland, and even though she was already beginning to show symptoms, and only when she was in Cleveland did she have second thoughts. I mean, I think, isn't there a lack of understanding
that people
have?
The CDC dropped the ball on that because the standard temperature for that was 100 degrees, and she had a 99.5.
Well,
so she was under the threshold.
But here's the point, Cynthia. So you're not going to know for 21 days whether you've been infected or not.
Correct.
Don't you think the individual has a responsibility to say, wait a minute, I've just been treating an Ebola patient that kills 7 out of 10 people.
Yes, they need to self-isolate. There's another case of someone on a cruise ship who handled samples.
How crazy is this?
And
what are they thinking?
She and her husband are self-isolating. They could not even fly them off the ship.
They wouldn't let them off the ship. They wouldn't let them off the ship in Belize.
So, but you know, this is this is not the last case that we're going to hear about. This is, you know, we are going to hear about some more cases like this as everybody tries to catch up and get ahead.
This disease has been around. This is not a new disease. This is what, 10, 15 years? They've known about it, and again, without the research. Because it wasn't here, it was somewhere else, and that's another issue altogether.
Casey,
I don't know if I agree with that.
I think there's been an evolution. As to why people are so concerned, this thing is much more transferable. They're still not even sure the mechanisms, so the chances of getting it if you're exposed to somebody are much greater than AIDS or SARS. And also
Steve,
the mortality. Mortality's at 70%.
I hate cutting you off, but we're running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
Stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from a short break.
Nice. No.
Oops. Yeah, sure.
Let's go.
Moms everywhere are finding ways to keep kids active and healthy.
Works every time.
Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov.
Dry.
Oh, I've got.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, with parting shots, Elbridge James.
We just spoke about Ebola and the lack of funding for it, but yet to this date, the oil and gas industry gets surpluses and gets money from the federal government. We're talking about a $5 to $7 billion cut between NIH and CDC over the last couple of years. And at the same time, the oil industry gets about $15 to $30 billion a year in subsidies. Where are our priorities? People or money?
Thank you, Elbridge. Cynthia, your parting shot.
I like to talk about education, and the last couple of weeks as we've been rolling out our after-school programs with middle schoolers, I've been checking in on them to find out how they're using technology today. And I have found out, and I've always known this, that I am still a dinosaur. I've been asking them about Facebook, and they go, Facebook, what? That's something our grandparents use. been asking them about Twitter. Oh, Twitter is like so over. They are all over Snapchat and Instagram, and that's where they are. And by the time I get on Snapchat and Instagram, they're going to be on to the next thing.
Thank you, Cynthia. Steve, did you get an education there?
Yeah, plus Kick. Kick is a Facebook for the youth.
What's Kick?
But my quick shout out is, we've already alluded to one, is to the Gazette. I think the Gazette editorial board showed remarkable balance in looking at what both the gubernatorial candidates stand for, and I think they have, the Gazette has their finger on the pulse. It's the economic issues that are really driving Maryland this year, which make this a competitive race. My second shout out is someone who I don't usually agree with, and that's Roger Berliner. I think he's taken a very balanced approach and an aggressive approach to finding a healthy medium to support the cab industry in Montgomery County, maybe ease some of the overregulations, and to also empower Lyft and Uber, which are innovative transportation services, so that the consumer in Montgomery County has the best range of choices.
Well, thank you, Steve. That was an interesting parting shot. I want to thank you all for being here. There's only 3 weeks before Election Day. Everybody ought to get really excited and get ready to get out and vote. And so I want to thank the viewers for tuning in tonight. You can watch us on Facebook or follow us on Facebook, although that's passé, right? Who cares about Facebook? You can follow us on Twitter, and you can always watch us at the Montgomery Community Media website, where you can watch us, our archive shows, our live shows, and you can see us once in a while on YouTube. For 21 This Week and the hardest hitting political talk show in Montgomery County, I'm Casey Aiken.
I want to be on.